Hello everyone, and welcome to another quick cut rate commander Precon upgrade guide, the semi-regular series in which we give Precon decks a quick glow up without breaking the bank. My name's Grazzet, and today we'll be giving the Fallout Universes Beyond Science Precon $35 worth of upgrades to bring it up to cut rate standards. As usual though, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like this content. Consider supporting the channel directly either via my Buy Me a Coffee or my Game Nerds affiliate link in the description if you really like it, and be sure to stick around until the end of the video to see what builds we'll be covering next and what commanders you'll be voting for an upcoming episode. So, with that out of the way, let's start by taking a look at the commander and playstyle. This deck's face commander is Dr. Madison Li, a 2/3 human scientist that costs Jeskai that has the following abilities. Firstly, whenever we cast an artifact spell, we get 1 energy. And secondly, we can tap her and pay 1 energy to grant target creature +1/+0, trample and haste until end of turn, tap her and pay 3 energy to draw a card, or tap her and pay 5 energy to return target artifact from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Possessing a lower weight CMC and a low power average toughness stat block for her cost, Dr. Madison Li's abilities position her to be a solid artifacts matter commander that uses energy as a means to generate us value, enabling her to repeatedly empower our creatures, generate us card advantage, and or even cheat our artifacts into play from our bin so long as we keep casting artifact spells to keep the energy flowing, which the base build generously provides us with an abundance of to help keep the lights on, alongside a variety of other sources of energy generation to help charge our batteries even faster, and even more artifact payoffs to work alongside Dr. Li to get more mileage out of our artifact-centric game plan. In fact, this deck has so much synergy out of the box that, much like the Mutant Menace Precon before it, even the quote-unquote less optimal entrants in the build can still be perfectly serviceable, making it another prime candidate to run as is if you want to go all in on the Fallout flavor, though, like all the other Precons from this set, it still has some legendary entrants that would be better fits in builds of their own. So, seeing as the deck's internal synergy is already rather good out of the box, our main focus in this upgrade will be to optimize our energy generation capability to ensure Dr. Li can reliably be activated each turn, adding in a few more ways to spend our energy outside of our commander to generate us even more board presence and value, and capping things off by slotting in a new suite of artifacts and artifact payoffs to work alongside our commander to enable our artifact-centric game plan even further, giving the good Doctor and her Brotherhood of Steel allies the best chance at toppling the Enclave's genocidal organization once and for all. So let us make our way to the capital wastes and into the bunker beneath the ruins of the Pentagon, now the citadel for the Brotherhood of Steel, where Dr. Madison Li can be found tirelessly working to restore the powerful military robot Liberty Prime. She had been working non-stop for days, pitting her expertise in fusion research against the robot's faulty power systems, with each passing hour bringing the capital wasteland that much closer to another apocalypse as the Enclave weaponized the Purity Project to kill every mutated man, woman, and child in the wastes. But she was determined to not let that happen, and with one last connection of power conduits, the weary doctor finally heard the sound she was waiting for.
Liberty Prime is online!
So, now that we know a bit more about the commander and playstyle, let's jump straight into the upgrades. Kicking things off with the new energy-producing additions we'll be adding to the build so that our commander and other energy payoffs have enough power to draw from throughout the course of the game, we'll be cutting the draw spell Nerd Rage, whose draw is serviceable but would be a much better fit for a build that cares about having lots of cards in hand rather than here, in favor of Era of Innovation, which takes advantage of our critical mass of artifacts and our decent number of artificers in the 99 to generate consistent energy for us at 1 mana a pop, as well as being an emergency draw source if we really need the cards, and slotting out Loyal Apprentice, whose passive Thopter generation doesn't build up our board fast enough here, to slot in Decoction Module, which provides us with energy generation whenever any creatures, token or otherwise, ETB at no mana cost, which can be very handy when used in conjunction with energy-focused creature token generators to refund some of the energy we spend to create them. Then, as part energy generators and part energy payoffs, we'll be scrapping Brotherhood of Steel, which is an okay artifact payoff, but pales in comparison with other artifact payoffs already included in the build and that we'll be adding, so we can put in Aetherworks Marvel in its place, which provides us with energy as our opponents destroy our permanents or resack them away for value, and, on top of that, lets us pump energy into it to cast a free spell from our deck each turn to help generate even more value. And replacing Nuka-Cola Vending Machine, which would be a fantastic addition to a food-centric deck that can take better advantage of its token creation as we crack our food, but doesn't have the food support here to warrant its inclusion, with the expensive but almost mandatory Gonti's Aetherheart, which functions as a supercharged version of our commander's ability that generates us 2 energy whenever any artifact ETBs under our control, not just when we cast them, and, when combined with a deck's already included Panharmonicon and artifact creating energy sinks, can easily go infinite to close out games, and that's all on top of letting us crack it for an extra turn if we really need to. Now, pivoting fully into energy payoffs proper, we'll be benching the new Fortification Camp, which is a fun throwback, but whose +1/+1 counter distribution and junk token creation are a bit too slow for our needs, in favor of Fabrication Module, whose much more on theme +1/+1 counter distribution as we gain energy will help empower our board at a much faster rate, while also giving us the option to use it as emergency energy production if we have the mana to spare, and firing the Thopter creating Whirler Rogue so we can hire the better Thopter creating Whirler Virtuoso, who gives us another way to turn our energy into artifact bodies, which, again, thanks to Gonti's Aetherheart and Panharmonicon, gives us yet another way to create infinite, this time evasive bodies for us to use to close out games. So, with all our new energy-centric additions covered, let's move on to the new wave of artifacts we'll be running in order to further proc our commander and better enable the artifact-themed portion of our game plan, in which we'll be smelting down Intelligence Bobblehead and Endurance Bobblehead, which, like all the other bobbleheads, really need the entire set in order to get the maximum use out of their effects, and raising the excess land cycling land Ash Barons, so we can slot in the artifact cost-reducing Ethereum Sculptor, Enthusiastic Mechanaut, and Foundry Inspector, all of which let us cast almost a third of our deck at a reduced rate to help build up our board states faster and proc all our artifact payoffs more often, cutting the Pillow Fort piece over encumbered, which can admittedly be backbreaking against artifact heavy decks, but otherwise just gives an opponent a bunch of resources they can crack for value and then never have to worry about it again, for Burnished Heart, which provides the build with even more ramp, this time in the form of lands, and lets us get extra uses out of it as it sacks itself away for its effect via our commander and other artifact reanimation sources, swapping out expert level safe, which is much too unreliable at providing us draw when we need it, to swap in Thought Monitor, which we can often cast for a single mana thanks to its artifact affinity to net us a 2/2 evasive body that draws us 2 when it comes down, and that we can again get multiple uses out of alongside our commander if and when it hits our bin to generate us even more card advantage, and, as our penultimate new artifact entry, we'll be exchanging out Synth Infiltrator, which will find a much better home in a clone-focused deck rather than this one, for Shurkai Genesis Engine, which provides us with cheap and repeatable draw and graveyard setup to let us dig for more resources while setting up Dr. Li's artifact reanimation, while simultaneously growing our board with token bodies and being a gigantic beatstick itself. And then, as our final new artifact entry and the first of our Artifacts Matter entries, we'll be removing the bit too slow flickering / removal saga, Vault 13 Dweller's Journey, and a much too goad focused Red Death Shipwrecker, so we can add in the melding pair, the Mightstone and Weakstone, and Urza Lord Protector, both of which are individually good here as either an ETB source of removal or draw that then serves as an artifact focused mana rock to help pad our core stats, or as another artifact cost reducer that also makes our instants and sorceries cheaper as a bonus to speed up the rate at which we can cast our spells, but when melded becomes a backbreaking walker that can completely take over the game with the amount of ramp, draw, removal, and board presence he can provide us with as soon as he comes down, and, if we can get to his ult, more or less wins us the game by scouring all our opponent's boards of everything except their lands while leaving our artifacts and himself untouched. Then, to round out the remainder of our new Artifacts Matter editions, we'll be replacing the 2 clue-focused legend James Wandering Dad with the more artifact-focused legend Joyra Weatherlight Captain, who generates us repeatable card advantage as we cast our large selection of artifact spells and our decent number of legendary creatures to help keep our hands nice and topped off, retiring the 2 low-impact artifact payoff Elder Owen Lions in favor of the more impactful Psy Master Thopterist, who can flood the board with evasive artifact bodies as we cast our artifact spells, and can repeatedly set up Dr. Li's artifact reanimation while generating us card advantage as he does so, sidelining the much too legendary creature-focused Sean Father of Synths to open up space for Oswald Fiddlebender, who functions as an artifact-themed birthing pod so we can tutor bigger and bigger artifacts from our deck into play while setting up our commander's artifact reanimation in the process, and lastly, shelving the generic card selection spell Unexpected Windfall for the more on-theme card selection walker, the Ready Scrap Savant, who can repeatedly set up our bin for our commander while letting us dig for more resources, and whose other 2 artifact-themed loyalty abilities help us generate even more value from our bin outside of her. And finally, as our last change to the build, we'll be refining our removal suite a bit by cutting the OK removal spell Crush Contraband and replacing it with the more flexible Generous Gift, which may be limited to 1 target, but makes up for it by hitting almost any type of permanent threat for cheaper to provide us with more reliable coverage. So, now that we've covered all 19 cards that we've upgraded from the core build, let's take a look at the breakdown for this Precon upgrade. Looking at the stats that matter to our game plan, we have 45 cards that are artifacts, and 27 cards that care about artifacts to help fuel our commander's energy counter creation and to generate us more value alongside her, 10 ways to get artifacts into our bin by sacking or discarding them, and 6 ways to recur and or reanimate our artifacts in order to reliably set up our commander's artifact reanimation, which is arguably her most powerful ability, while still being able to take advantage of our bin outside of her, and 24 sources of energy along with 15 cards that care about energy to ensure Dr. Li will have the energy needed to consistently be used each turn, while giving us additional ways to spend our energy for additional value. For general deck stats, we have 19 ramp sources, 15 card draw sources, 11 targeted removal sources, and 2 board wipes, with our ramp and draw being much higher than average, which is due to us wanting to cast as many artifacts as we can in quick succession in order to proc our commander's energy generation, and all our other artifact payoffs as often and as fast as possible so we can take over the game with them. Looking at our mana curve, we have an average CMC of 3.28, leaving us with a mid-weight curve that aims to get Dr. Li out quickly, ideally alongside other artifact payoffs, and then start casting as many artifact spells as we can in order to generate as much energy and value off of them as we can. From there, it's just a matter of us building up our board more and more with artifacts and artifact payoffs to build up our board presence and resources, stockpiling more and more energy in doing so, and eventually either overwhelming our opponents with our gigantic board of machines, or pumping all our energy into one of our many energy payoffs to close out the game that way instead. The final price of this build then comes out to be $80.34 after upgrades. This price does not include tax or shipping and assumes that the price you paid for the Precon was $45. The price of the cards was calculated by using the cheapest listed marketplace price on TCG Player at the time of this recording. Now, if we want to add even more upgrades by going over budget, we can consider replacing Burnished Heart and Oswald Fiddlebender with Goblin Engineer and Goblin Welder, both of which let us make further use out of our graveyard by continually letting us sack and reanimate our artifacts from it. Thought Monitor can be resculpted into Esper Sentinel, which can hit our board much sooner and can provide much more card advantage throughout its lifetime as our opponents cast their spells, especially once we start pumping its stats. And lastly, we can trade out Shurikai Genesis Engine for the One Ring, which we can use as repeatable card advantage that we can quote-unquote reset via our artifact hacking sources before it can do significant damage to us, though it should be noted we won't be able to protect against the damage its price is going to inflict on our bank accounts. Thanks everyone for sticking around until the end of the video. So, with the Science Precon upgrade complete, along with all the other Precon upgrades for the Fallout set, all of which you can check out on the card above or in the link in the description, it's time for us to return to our regularly scheduled builds by covering the previously postponed poll winner, Yaris Roar of the Old Gods, followed by last week's poll winner, Mr. House, President and CEO. So look forward to those two builds coming soon. Then, moving on to this week's poll, we'll have commanders from both Murders at Karlov Manor and Fallout vying for your votes, with this week's contenders being the Elf and Wolf centric Vojja Jaws of the Enclave, the -1/-1 counter distributing Massacre Girl Known Killer, the aura multiplying 3-dog Galaxy News DJ, and a legendary clone creating Sean, Father of Synths. So be sure to cast your votes, link in the description, before the deadline on March 15th, and let me know in the comments which commander you voted for and which commanders from these sets you'd like to see me feature in future polls. And again, before we close out, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy this content. Consider donating to buy me a coffee or use my Game Nerds affiliate link if you want to support the channel directly. And if you'd like to see more videos like this one, either click on the videos floating around my head for the latest builds, or click on the card above for a playlist of all the deck techs I've made so far. And with that, have a good one folks, and stay safe.